You got no sleep. Let me turn this down in the back. Get that light on like that shine on my face. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to another Run Glorious Day. As we're getting ready, pull this up right here so I can see everything from this angle. Put that in there like this. How you guys doing today? What's up, fam? Eastern Standard Time. Alright. Gotta put some stuff in. How y'all doing today? Welcome to Monday. Remember, Monday is that quintessential day of our coming into our greatness, coming into that energy as everything's flowing over here. Divine Rise. Blessed be to your day. Maybe everything you require, everything you desire. Feeling good after my workout. It's that cool weather. I'm starting to discover certain things about myself more and more. I like the fall. I like that crisp autumn air. I like going out for my run in that crisp autumn air. I like going out for that crisp autumn air. I like going out in that run. I like getting myself working and getting myself together in that energy. But today, if you're not familiar with what we've been going into the last couple of weeks, for about 2 weeks now, we've been getting into the actual building process. We've been getting deeper into the building process. Using understanding how to use the energy. One of the biggest things about doing a lot of the work, us working on ourselves, us coming into this aspect with ourselves, as we like to say it. One of the biggest things that we got to understand is, in order for you to create that new space, we're going to be honest. In order for you to create that new space, you have to assess what you've been doing, how you already been using it. You want to assess how we already been using it. For example, if I asked you the question, how long does an emotional impulse last? That means from the moment that you're triggered, the moment that emotion comes up, that feeling comes up, how long does that initial pulse last? Hold that question. If I asked you, how long does it take in that average time minimum to reset that initial emotional impulse? If I ask you that question, if you don't know the answers to these two questions, just as an example, you don't know the answer to these two questions, it's okay. I'm going to ask you another question. How do you set an affirmation? How are you really setting intentions and affirmations? Think about that. I really want you to think about that. How are you setting the intentions and the affirmations of your day-to-day in your space? How are you able to identify what needs to be done in the aspect? Let's build out another example. If something's going to take you 6 months, and let's say you read something, a certification for a job, a certification to do something, it's going to take you about 3 to 6 months to do. Okay, that's the baseline. That's the structuring. That's the after effect. That's the structuring. What about the grounding? The assessment of the grounds. That's the emotional, the energetics, those impulses, that emotional pulse. That's that emotional trigger. That's that bait. That's the grounding. That's if you've ever looked and you've seen somebody, whether they're building a house, building a new property, building a new apartment complex, building a new building, the first people that go out there are the people, the engineers that are going out to do the zoning. They're zoning the grounds. They're zoning the grounds not even for grading. They're zoning the grounds for, okay, cool. This much, they're zoning the ground for, okay, you only can dig this deep in this area, this deep in this area. You only can go so deep in this area. There's a previous aspect inside of that space, even before they set the foundation. In the aspect of now think about these aspects. Remember, everything becomes that fractal aspect that you understand it. When we think about manifestation, just manifesting things. And if someone tells you, one of the biggest things that I work on with my clients, is actually building out that energetic space. One of those things that we're going to be working on October 31st, 8 p.m., the introduction to meet and greet is Chakra and Shadow. I'm relaunching the class. Last year I had some things come up. I had my own spiritual things came up, physical things I had to take care of, but we back and we on knockout with the class. But how are you building out that space for the manifestation? Even if we think about the aspect, I'm going to give you another aspect. Even when it says when you're separating from the outcome, do you understand before a certain point in time, we never really understood or had the information, or the information was being displayed in the aspects of building out the space. Because 9 times out of 10, when that fleeting emotion came up and it activated that 90, give you the answer. It takes an emotional impulse, emotional pulse is 90 seconds. When you get angry, you are angry for the sum of 90 seconds. To reset that trigger of being angered, being triggered about your shame, guilt, whatever that emotional pulse came out, takes about 20 minutes minimum. It takes about 20 minutes. And this is important in the aspects of understanding. We understand time isn't linear. Time becomes that absolute factor, or it has everything comes in aspects of layers. So I'll give you an example. You wake up. You're not in the best mood. Because you went to bed, you weren't in the best mood. You woke up, you went to sleep angry. Let's say you went to sleep angry. You woke up and the first thing that you're going to look for unconsciously is something to keep you, to feed that emotional impulse or give you the experience of that emotional impulse. So you still live it. You didn't reset it. You didn't reset that impulse. You didn't reset it. You just went to sleep. It's similar to like if you ate some food before you went to bed, whatever you ate before you went to bed, now you went to sleep on top of that. It's not, you just slept on that. So you wake up. When you wake up, this is the aspect of think about when you rushing all the time. You're rushing to go to work. You're rushing to get the kids to school. You're rushing to Facebook. You're rushing to Instagram. You're rushing to YouTube. You're rushing to watch the news. You're rushing to something. It's because unconsciously you are 20 minutes behind. You're a minimum of 20 minutes behind. You are a minimum of 20 minutes behind. I want you to think about it. You're already a minimum of 20 minutes behind. So you're already a minimum of 20 minutes behind by the time you wake up. Since you woke up 20 minutes behind and now you're rushing, you have to remember also, look at the energetics, those brain wavelengths. You have to remember that when you first wake up, you're waking up out of the delta state, the delta wave, the delta state, your resting state, and you're slipping into the theta state. So now, and I always talk about emotional presence, you're not emotionally present. You're not present. The last thing, what you went to bed for is acting in the aspect of that anger. What you went to bed on, that anger you went to bed on, Now you waking up on that. That's what's going to take that's what's going to take precedence in the aspect of that space. You didn't meditate. So now you coming into that theta state. That's the programming state. That's the sacral chakra. That's the feeling. So now you're sitting, that feeling is now present. The anger is now present. Now it needs to be fed. Remember the lower aspects of yourself or the lower emotions and the higher aspects of the emotions. You didn't wake up in gratitude. 9 times out of 10, since you went to bed angry, and what you went to bed angry about, whether it was your kid broke your laptop, or your girl didn't give you none, or your dude cheated, whatever it may have been, you went to sleep on that. So when you leave, and we're going to get deep into this, when you leave, you're going out through that port. Remember, when we think about our chakras, remember each one of your chakras is an energy port. So you went out on that energy port of feeling angry, feeling cheated, feeling done wrong, feeling like you ain't enough. Whatever that feeling was, you didn't sit with it and take that inventory and sit there and question it. You didn't do that. So 9 times out of 10, most of the times when you're going out when you're leaving the physical space, going into the astral space, you're going out through the theta. You're going out through that theta. You're going out through that sacral port. That's the port you're going out through. That's why your dreams be crazy. You're not feeling the dream. Think about it. You're not feeling the dream. You're not feeling the dream. You felt like you didn't get enough sleep. All that aspect, you felt like you didn't get enough sleep. You felt like because you're still feeding that, felt like you were done wrong. In that space, this is what you're feeding. This is what you're feeding. In that space, this is what you're feeding. So now you come into, remember, think about this, we're going to get deep into this in the class. Now you in that theta space, the next space is the solar plexus, i.e. the alpha wave. That's the wave of awareness. Now I'm going to stop there in that space, the wave of awareness. That's the wave of awareness. Most of the time, due to the title of this live, most of the aspects of when you're stuck inside of a certain space is that you're only, because you haven't dealt with the trauma, you haven't sat down you have not sat down in a actual space, from a space that you're not trying to look at it from a bias point. I'm doing this just to get by in that space. When you acting in that space, you're only aware of the pain. 90%, most of the people aspects when you inside of your consciousness, you're only aware of pain. You're only aware of the guilt. You're only aware of whatever trauma it may be. So that's your awareness. Whether you accept it or not doesn't matter. Gonna make it real. Whether you accept it or not doesn't matter. Whether you accept your accountability doesn't matter. Whether you accept the character defect, your behavior, your pattern, you accept responsibility doesn't matter. Because that pulse is still pulsing. Just like the only thing that you can do with that emotional pulse is identify and learn how to maintain it. Learn how to learn it. You're not getting out of I always talk about this as spiritual bypassing. You're not getting out of dealing what you need to deal with. So let's look at that 20 minutes. Look at that 20 minutes. Now you wake up, you're already 20 minutes behind the 8 ball, and now you got 30 minutes before you got to go to work. Let's think about it like this. Let's use as an example. Everything in the future tense is going to be 3 times. It's going to take about times 3. So 20 times 3 is 60. So that's already an hour. So if you're thinking about the future aspects, you were thinking about the bills, you thinking about making it to work on time, you got to get something to eat, you already an hour behind. Energetically, you're already an hour behind. Since you're already energetically an hour behind, and you thinking about this anxiety kicking in, everything that's going to manifest inside of that space, since you have not identified that anger, is meant to keep you angry. This is a lot of times when you're saying, I don't like doing this, this, and this, or sitting with this, this, and this, because every time I sit with this, I seem to, once I'm angry, this is when we always talk about, when you're angry, were you really angry? Were you really upset? Did they really piss you off? Doesn't matter, because all you can control is take accountability for your response. So then you spent 15, 20 minutes overlapping that 15, 20 minutes, that hour over and over and over again. You turning 8 hours at the job into misery. So of course, everything. So now a person to say, oh, I'm having a good, great day coming into work. You don't like that person. So the first things that you're going to see is everything that's going to keep you in that emotional pulse, to keep that 20 minutes from resetting itself. So by the time you get to the end of the day, you feel like you didn't get nothing done. By the time you get to the end of that day, you didn't get nothing done. I'm more tired. All because you don't understand that emotional impulse. So how are you building out a space if you don't understand, you haven't checked your grounding? It's more than just you sitting there and grounding. I'm going to go stand outside and let the sun hit me and let this negative energy roll off of me. But if you're not I always talk about this. If you're not acknowledging what you're allowed, if you're not acknowledging it, you're not assessing it, are you really doing the work? Are you really doing the work? Or are you looking for, 9 times out of 10, we talked about this last week, most of the times you're looking for the scapegoat. The week before we got into those scapegoats, we talked like the overall building process. You got stuck looking for a scapegoat. So now your standard, your emotional impulse identifies your standard, where you are at in your standards. But when we're used to the hope aspect, when we talk about this hope aspect, that hope dealing to whatever you're trying to work on with yourself, that's to bypass and to give yourself an exemption. This is when we think about the aspects of expectations. One of my biggest things that I've worked on over the last, now about 6 years, is I go into every situation, every space, any timeline, any reality, I go in with no expectations. I want you to understand this. I go in with no expectations. Since I don't go in with any expectations, I'm not prone to put in exemptions. I'm not prone to putting in exemptions. You feel what I'm saying? This is the base process of really understanding how you building out the grounds for your space. And why you can see somebody doing things. Oh my God, that person's doing this and they're doing that and they're talking about this and they're talking about this. And it sounds real inspirational. But then your anxiety kicks in. I can't do that. Your resentment kicks in. Can't believe this young motherfucker, this young chick, this young dude is telling me this, this, and this. Can't believe this. I should have been doing that before. In that space. And then you allow that to be your build out of you allow that to be the build out. So now you looking for, because whether it's a negative or a positive expectation, your negative expectations, you're going to put in positive, you're going to look for, your exemptions are going to be positive. Remember, you got to look at how that wavelength goes in. Your negative expectations are going to be based on positive exemptions. And your positive expectations are going to come with negative exemptions. All because you're not ready to sit and assess your standard. You got to assess your standards. One of my biggest standards is I must honor, I will honor, I must honor that I require 6 hours to me. I require 6 hours to myself. In that 6 hours, I require at least 4 of those hours dedicated to me. And I'm breaking this down. Dedicated to myself. I need at least 6 hours dedicated to me. That means in that 6 hours is my self-care routine and my disciplines. That means I'm in charge. I'm taking that charge. I'm taking that ability. I'm taking that accountability and that authority. That capacity, that open up that capacity I always talk about this all the time. For me, 4 a.m. is the time that starts my 6 hours. 4 a.m. is the time that starts my 6 hours. Up at 4 a.m., I might drop down, do about 30 push-ups. I just explained this to somebody yesterday. I'll hit my 30 push-ups. Roll, sit back up, get in my lotus position. Hit that. Put myself in that space. Hit that first one. Take my deep breaths. Get my breath back. My breath work. Sit there for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Halfway, when I get to that 45 minute, I can tell I'm in that 45-minute point in my meditation because I can feel my energy rise. I can feel that energy cycling up. I can feel myself being grounded because my feet stop with I got this I'm vibrating in my ankle, my legs and shit. So I know my legs. So I know now I'm waking up in my legs, in my thighs. I feel it I feel that theta coming online, that reset programming coming online. Those I ams. I feel myself saying the I am, the I feel, the I act, the I love, the I speak, I envision, I understand from yesterday, day before yesterday. So now instead of me having to, for example, building an example, for me sitting in that space, when I start feeling myself saying that to myself, I'm pulling from all of the realities in which I've said I'm in gratitude, I'm in my purpose. I'm pulling that energy from all those realities. I'm pulling all of my energy, all my energy coming back to me. So by the time I'm sitting inside of that space and I come to this point, that beta wave, we're going to get deep into this beta wave because a lot of us don't understand that beta wave is the heart chakra. The beta wave is the heart chakra. That's why those 3 valves are them 3 waves of the beta wave. So I understand awareness, processing, and function. See, a lot of us get stuck in function because that overbalance keeps you in a state of function, trying to function, going through the motions. So you're speaking, but you're not speaking anything in the power. So it don't matter because you don't understand how the emotional impulse, let's go back to what I said earlier on. You don't understand how long an emotional impulse lasts. You don't understand how to deal with that. You don't have that true basis of grounding understanding in. It takes about 20 minutes minimum to sit with the trigger, you speaking out of turn. We've heard that from the old folks. You speaking out of turn. So since you speaking out of turn, you're seeing out of turn. You can't even sit in your simple meditation while your eyes are closed and see your shadow moving. Can you see yourself with your eyes closed? Can you see yourself go through the mudras without even thinking about them? Your body's naturally going through each one of the motions and functions automatically. It's autonomous. It knows exactly which one you need to do next. But see, because you don't understand your emotional impulse, you're not truly going through that grounding. Guess what happens? You don't trust yourself you don't trust yourself. You're too busy, because here becomes the reality to it. You're too busy trying to maintain the pose. So you got that voice in your ear talking about, nah, you got to sit up straight. You got to do this. You got to do this. You're so busy, along with every other 150 other million thoughts going through your head, and you sitting there in that space. You're so busy trying to capitalize on, no, I didn't do it right, or my hand didn't go right. This didn't happen right. I didn't hold it long enough. Did I hold it long enough? Did I breathe? You're so busy in your head that you don't understand what is being programmed in the aspects of those feelings. It don't matter what's in your head. The emotion that you're feeling is what's going to set the term for that program. This is when I tell people all the time, it's like, whenever you sit there, whatever you had that thought about in the aspects of your meditation, whenever you sitting there affirming, whenever you're sitting there setting your intentions, the first things that come up are the things that you have to deal with. But since you're not used to trusting your intuition, because you took the answer of your intuition is going to lead you, but you don't understand that your intuition, if you're not used to sitting with your intuition, it's going to make you real uncomfortable first. It's going to put you in the space of discomfort first. It's going to bring up somewhere that you need to go. We're not talking about the physical space, but it's going to make you see or make you feel where you need to go physically, that you say, man, why I got to go there? Man, I've done that. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. Because we're not talking about the physical space. A lot of time, it's not about the physical space. It's about what that physical space actually represents. What lesson that physical space represents. What feeling that physical space represents. See, if you don't understand the representation of that space, because we get used to, because you're not sitting with you're not sitting with it. You don't know how to. That's okay. You don't know how to sit with it. It's okay. That's the first thing you're going to have to admit to yourself. I don't understand the ability or the capacity of sitting with said information. My feelings or my expectations are going to be negative. So since my expectations are negative, this person can say something that's very positive. What I'm going to look for in exemption is inspirational positivity. Remember, I've told you before, I do not subscribe to think positive vibes only. I always say subscribe to what is constructive. Subscribe the aspects of I must deal with what is constructive, what is conducive in the aspects to what I need to deal with. I know it's going to take, if I'm presented a key or a tool that is telling me that it's going to take 6 months to a year in this process, that is the stabilizing factor to help me, guide me through grounding and building up and understanding the standard of my foundation. Removing expectations from what I'm trying to get from this is going to get me exactly what is absolutely what I need from this. It's one of the biggest things that I go through. It's one of the biggest things that I go through when I'm talking to my clients and I'm bringing them in and it's like, okay, cool. It's time for us to go into aspects of therapy and sitting down with me. We have that consultation, that beginning conversation. And the main aspects of our beginning conversation is, I want you to tell me your story. Let's not do this. Let's deal with this now while we got the chance. All right, cool. Get that out of there. Anyway, okay, we're back. Going inside of that space with yourself of really understanding, okay, cool. This is what I need to do this is it for the next 6 months. I'm thinking therapy. For the next 6 months, I'm thinking mentorship. For the next 6 months, I'm going through a mentor program. I'm going through therapy. I'm about to go through this process for the next 6 months. Removing my expectations, removing the expectations, removing the exemption is going to allow me to sit in the aspects of those feelings. See, the hardest thing for us to sit in is that feeling. The hardest thing for my client, for some of my clients, is sitting and dealing with the expectation. Because I've said this before, I've said this in class, I've said this in other lives, I've said this in Friday night lectures. A lot of the times for me, one of the biggest things that I have to deal with when I'm working with clients is a lot of my clients are older than me. A lot of my clients in the earthly age are older than me. Because that carries on from in every job that when I was working when I was in that space going through my processes earlier on, everything that I did, I was always the youngest at. That was like always the constant. In every job, I was always the youngest here, the youngest doing whatever. So what would be that was a part of my standard. I'm always going to seem to be the youngest. I'm always going to seem to be this aspect. I'm never going to look like what is the expectation of that space. And because I started understanding that that's the only way that I could break away from the old aspects of the space. You see how you assess the new grounding? The only way that I could shift and get out of that fear space of, oh my God, if I do this, then there's no going back and all this stuff. The only way that I could accept those things was accepting that in every space, regardless, my standard, as I'm now developing a true standard for myself, now I'm going to be letting go of expectations. This is a part of the acceptance process. In accepting, I can accept others' expectations of me. I can accept others' exemptions and thought processes in that field. I can accept these things. I understand I don't have to partake in these things because now this is all going to be based on me developing the disciplines around my standards, the disciplines around my structure, the disciplines around how I move. So now whatever space I go into, whether it be negative, you can go into a hellified toxic space. Since I'm taking away expectations, my mind is not going to be on, if I go into this negative space, it's going to make me negative. No. If I go over here, it's going to make me act a certain way. No. All that space is doing is bringing it to the surface. All your job is doing is bringing your lacks of accountability, your lack of the ability to manage money, your lack of ability to manage time to the surface. That's all it's doing. Because that's why you get mad. That's when the only reason that you can get upset, the only reason that's fathom that makes sense of you getting upset at your job for not giving you that time off or not letting you or trying to make you work extra shifts is because all of that's reflections to you to look at and assess and observe with yourself of in what spaces in my life am I moving in lack that set the tone, that give this tone, this pulse life. When I get off work, what am I really doing when I get off? When I start my day, how do I really start my day? See, when you start breaking that down, the old structuring of the old space and really sitting with it, then you can that's when you start removing that cognitive bias. It's kind of like, it's like you have to understand how you built a lot of these spaces. Most of the spaces that you lived in based on the stuff that's unresolved, you have to accept that it was based on lack. That's why I said Love spells don't work in survival mode. Passport bros or you about to take another class, or you about to go cop another crystal, you about to go cop. It doesn't work in a survival space. Because everything that you read is an absolute. Every deity that you read about is in an absolute. It has a higher and a lower aspects to itself. Every crystal, every stone has a higher and lower. It's in an absolute function. Every law that you read is absolute. Every law that you want to say is absolute. It isn't, okay, the mind is all and the universe is mental, but only when it's over here and it serves this purpose. Not over here. That can't be applied over here. Everything is in an absolute state. You are shifted in aspects of that duality. You're still trying to experience that duality. One of the wildest things that I really understood with myself that I had to understand was when I talk about human design is, for me, is what incarnation are you in? What quarter of initiation are you in? Mine is the mind. I'm second level mind. I'm third level mind. Because when I look at, like, for example, with my human design chart, mine is I'm a right angle cross. Right angle crosses are meant, me being a manifested generator, me being a right angle cross, I'm meant to create karma. That means I'm meant to create those new blips. I'm meant to be opposition. I'm meant to be opposition. I'm meant to be the opposed. I'm meant to do the opposite. That is a part of my process. So that will be my main challenge. Thus, every aspect of my name. See, the aspect that when you're building out, when you're, let me see that. Is it that you end up tapping into the lower aspect of said deity or crystal? Mm-hmm. See, because since the crystal and the deity operates in absolute. Operates in absolute. It's not that you're tapping into the lower aspects of that crystal or deity. That is going to be your conduit to what comes up. So if you're in a negative space, you're in survival mode. Like, use an example. If you're in survival mode, you're in that lower aspects. You feel you have not disciplined your sexual urges and you're in a debaucherous state. Every deity that you're going to read about, the first thing that's going to pop up to you is the debauchery. That's the first thing that's going to pop up to you. That's what's going to be presented to you. It's the debauchery. It's going to be the debauchery. It's going to be, oh my God. It's going to be the debauchery. It's going to be, oh my God. Baron Samedi is, you're going to see the debauchery first. Because you haven't assessed those things. It's kind of like aspects of looking at Baphomet. And since you're in the lower aspects of self, all you see are the lower aspects of the Baphomet. Or whatever deity that you're using to tap into. You're only seeing the lower aspects of it. Because those are the things that you have to work on and assess first. Those are the first things that you have to do the assessment with. That's where you have to acknowledge. That's where your work starts. You can choose to spiritually bypass. You can choose to spiritually bypass and hop into the higher aspects of whatever deity, whatever energy you want to work with. You can. What you understand? You can. But guess what's going to happen? It's going to knock your ass. It's going to knock you right back down. It's like, nope. You ain't ready for this. That's where your dreams going to be wild. That's where your dreams going to be wild. You unlock some shit that you weren't supposed to be playing with. So now you got to allow that to run out. But going back to what I just said, what we said earlier on, since you don't understand the basics of energetic impulses, since you don't understand how long an energetic impulse takes to reset itself in that fashion, you're 20 minutes in to working with that deity, you're 20 minutes into working with that energy, and since you do not understand the emotional impulse, that 90 seconds, that infatuation, you're trying to make that infatuation last. Whatever came up in that infatuated state, you're going to try to use that as your precursor instead of allowing the energy to reset itself. So now you just pulse out. Now you just keep going out further. You're going further and further out away from yourself to avoid your actual character, to avoid what is meant to be identified. This is where we think about you're in this state of overgeneralizing everything because you're not used to sitting. You're not used to sitting with it long enough. You're not used to, okay, cool. Maybe I do need to sit with, what is it bringing up? What feelings, thoughts, ideals is coming up inside of that space? I need to sit with this. How do I sit with it? By the time you start asking yourself asking those questions, okay, cool. Maybe I do need to go. I'm seeing the pattern. Some of the simplest shit that we have to do a lot of times is acknowledging your pattern. Acknowledging your pattern. Because it's hard. It is very hard to acknowledge your pattern. Acknowledge your behavior. Your behavior, because here becomes the aspect, since you're stuck in not identifying those pulses in the original pulse, when that behavior comes up, that behavior may have been negative. That behavior may have been negative, but it served you a purpose. So because that behavior was negative and it served you a purpose, you put in a positive exemption for it. Remember, negative links to that positive. You put in a positive exemption for it. I can do that in this space over here. So when I go to work, so think about it. I'm going to work around these these musty, these crazy ass cave dwellers. So I need to act this way. So this behavior is okay. But now every time that you acknowledge it, when you acknowledge it, you're now setting a new cursor. So now that's the negative. That's the opposing effect. So naturally that shit starts to push away. So now that doesn't work. But because you're not used to sitting in the space of that grounding with oneself, you're used to everything and filling it in by itself. You don't have to fill it in. You don't have to acknowledge it. Everything filling it in for itself, you're not used to being able to actually observe things for what they are. It's like me working out. It's like me working out. And if I decide to go to the gym, my old aspects of me going to the gym, since me going to the gym was not based on celebration, I had to be honest. Since me going to the gym earlier on was not based on celebrating my abilities, my going to the gym was only when I was upset, only because of unresolved insecurity, unresolved shame, guilt. I'm going to get bigger, Since I was inside of that space, guess what I was presented with? Every single time I filled up my space were things to trigger that. So my entire hour workout, my entire hour 45-minute workout, the energy was preset. Now think about that in the physical manifestation. That's why when you sitting there and grabbing the weight, if I know that I have not done bicep curls before, and I'm gonna try to go grab the biggest weights, I'm gonna overextend myself. So now I done went and grabbed the 50-pound weights, knowing I should have started with the 25 joints. And now I've overextended my energy inside of that space. Now I've overextended my energy in that space. I know that I overextended my energy inside of that space because when I go home and I wake up the next day, instead of my arms being able to extend my arms, I'm walking around looking like a T-Rex for 2 weeks. I'm walking around looking like a T-Rex for 2 weeks. You feel what I'm saying? That natural tearing process is going to happen regardless. The tear down process, those micro tears are going to happen regardless. But since I'm overextending myself, I am now creating I'm creating a tear that's only going to expose an existing wound. See, this is that. Then when we talk about when sitting with me as your therapist, your advisor, your mentor, I'm meant to trigger micro tears. We're gonna trigger micro tears. That way we can assess the wound at a certain at a pace to where you actually can absorb the information, to where you actually can work on it. So this triggers the expectations. This is why a lot of times, the first time we have a session, I'm gonna let you go for 15 minutes straight. I always talk about this. I'm gonna let you go 15 minutes straight, strong. Get it all out. Vent, blame, do whatever, 15 minutes. Give you 15 minutes. I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. 15 minutes. There's a reason. Give me the 15 minutes. Because right after that 15-minute point, and I say, okay, cool. Okay. All that's valid. Take a deep breath for me. Hold it. And I'm going to start counting you back. That breathing exercise lasts about 5 minutes. Because now that you let it all out, that first 15 minutes, that's the buildup of that pulse. That is the coming to the peak of that pulse. That last 5 minutes, so that first 5 minutes, that breathing exercise. Now, I spend the next 5 minutes, how you feel? How you feel? You feeling good? All right, cool. Here's what I noticed. And then I say, here's what I noticed. I noticed that whenever you're going into a space, you can't help but, for an example, because naturally when we go into a space, you can't help but put in negative exemption points. You flood that space with cortisol. This is the function inside of the space. You're stressed out. So naturally, since you're stressed out, your body pumps cortisol. So you naturally put out the chemical aspect of cortisol in the physical manifestation in your space and tell me about everything that's stressing you out. Your lady don't love you. Your dude don't love you. Whatever it may be. Your kids is doing this. You put all that cortisol out. My purpose? Okay, cool. Let's assess it. I'm going to let you, okay, here. This is what I noticed. 5 minutes. Next 5 minutes. Give you a moment to process it. Damn. You know what? I noticed that the other day. But I didn't know how to, you feel what I'm saying? However we have that conversation. And then we build it out into that space. For the first time ever, you officially were able to sit with yourself, even if it was, since I removed all expectations without you knowing, we removed expectations. We removed the expectations by acknowledging them. We removed the exemptions by acknowledging them. This is the aspect when we think about dealing with our traumas, dealing with that unresolved, you deal with it by acknowledging it. By accepting it. You don't remove it by, I'm going to go get this black obsidian stone. I'm going to go get this black obsidian and I'm going to do a cord cutting and now it's gone. No, that's not how it works. All that black obsidian is doing is magnifying the cord. It's showing you where the cord is. All right, cool. This is the tether. What is it connected to? Let me work on. I've channeled this energy to this space. I've created a new axiom point. So as I'm feeling this emotion come up, I now have this crystal, this stone to now focus on in what I am doing. That's all the crystal does. It enhances your ability to focus. That's what the deity is for. It enhances your ability and lays out the guidelines of these are the things that I'm focusing on. These are the things that I'm working on. It's not going to be this bypassing aspect or this Jesus effect of I'm going to put all this energy into this and it's supposed to give me this, this, and this. Because that's the same equivalent of you mad because Obama didn't do nothing for 8 years. You mad because Trump didn't do this, this, and this. You mad because Biden ain't doing this, this, and this. You mad because your job didn't do this. That's not what your job was there for. You told yourself that your job was supposed to give you that, that, and that, and that. Give yourself the raise and all the. You told your job that. That's what you took in there. And since you took in those expectations, you made exemptions. What were your exemptions going into your job? Because you have no standard. Your standard is the aspects of your disciplines. You went in with, okay, they said they're going to pay me X amount of dollars an hour. All right, cool, that's an exemption. I could work those hours. You put in the expectation. You put in the existence. I'm only coming here to work, go home. So you put in all those exemptions. So by the time you come to that space, you get that first paycheck. Man, I ain't getting paid what I need to be getting paid. I went and bought this. What's the first thing that you say? I went and bought this. I need to go do this. You knew you needed to do that first. You knew you needed to handle that first. But because, and I've talked about this before, because you're only used to that reactionary process. Since you're only aware of pain, since you're only aware of the torment, the lack, that you have to go through, since you're only used to what you've been through and what got you to this point and attaching your accolades and your attributes and the things that you need to be doing to trauma, to your unresolved, to not having that conversation, to not sitting down, to not going through that process, what do you keep doing? You keep avoiding those characters. You're doing everything to avoid the aspects, the abilities and the capacities of that character. So now you can't separate from the outcome because your outcome is so gilded by expectations. Your outcome is so gilded by exemptions that since when the posts come up, the moment when you have a chance to do what you need to be doing, because you're always presented two sides, what you want and what you need. Since you're so used to the infatuation, and since you're not used to sitting with that, oh my God, you have a negative expectation, so you don't do it, you go for what you want. After a while, you've built out your entire space based on what you want. But it never feels right. It never feels like enough. It always feels like it's too late. I always feel like I gotta apologize. Why am I the one that always gotta apologize? Why am I the one that always gotta be the bigger person? Why am I the one that always gotta do this? Why am I the one that always gotta do this? Why? What's the point of you asking about all of these whys if you're not going to if you're not going to acknowledge you need to be present to answer those questions? What is the point of you asking all of those questions if you're not going to sit in the process of answering those questions truthfully? Remember, the truth serves itself, and answer only serves perception. Your truth serves itself, and it challenges the bringing forth by day the new perspective. It challenges you to become present. But if you're not used to really being, you can tell you're not used to being present because every time that you sit down and meditate, 50 million other thoughts come up. You're not used to even being present. You can't even enjoy the fact, because all these thoughts are coming up, you can't even enjoy the feeling or embrace the feeling or act in the feeling or speak in the feeling or envision that feeling, envision the understanding that these are the beginning, these thoughts are the ports into these realities around me. All of these ports are going to take me into the realities that all of these ports are going to take me into the energy that I'm trying to tap into. That's what has to be dealt with first. I have to assess my spending habits. I have to assess, why do I feel the need to need a vacation? Why am I so gun-ho on subscribing to creating a world in where I have to take a vacation from? That sounds like survival. That sounds like lack. That sounds like survival. That sounds like lack. What am I avoiding? Why am I sitting in my car for 5 to 10 minutes before I go into the house? If I'm truly happy, why am I going to these 5 other places before I go home? You know what I'm saying? Why am I fighting the fact that I may need to go back to home base? Home base may not just necessarily mean home, but it might mean I might need to go back to I need to go back home. I need to go back to my hometown, my home state. I need to go back into that space. I'm avoiding some shit. Why am I still holding on to the thought of what my mother did and what my pops did as my beacon of hope that somebody's going to see me as the worth? You feel what I'm saying? Why do I continue to keep myself pedaling inside of this space over and over again? I've been doing this for 2-3 years and I haven't seen the results or felt results that I'm getting anywhere. So what's the process of me letting go of this? What brought me into this in the first place? Because it was easy. 90% of the shit that you're doing is because it's easy. You say you don't need the job, but your job is paying for this. You say you don't need this, but it's taking care of something. It's an even exchange. It's taking care of the even exchange for you. So you don't have to be present with it. I don't have to think about budgeting out my time to do this overhead because I have something else that's going to do it for me. My job takes care of this for me. My job takes care of that for me. You get what I'm saying? My insurance takes care of this for me. This takes care of this for me. So I don't really got to do that. I ain't got to take no control. I don't have to sit there and take 6 hours to myself because when I first wake up, I pick up my cell phone and my kids, my job, my mom, whoever is going to text me. And that's going to take up that 20 minutes of my time. That 20 minutes of my time is about to be taken up. I got to multiply that by 3. So that takes care of an hour. That's why I always seem to procrastinate. That's why I'm always procrastinating. Because the emotional impulse happens. I'm infatuated for a little bit. Then I'm riding through the waves of the trigger. So that's 20 minutes that I'm not accounting for. I'm riding through the waves of that trigger, so that's 20 minutes I'm not accounting for. Now I'm trying to talk myself into it. That's another 20 minutes. And then I'm going to end up doing, if I do it, I'm going to half-ass it. Because if I do this aspect, I'm going to half-ass it. So that's another 20 minutes. So I'm going to half-ass it. So now I'm a fast. I ain't built out the space of a fast. I ain't built out that space of fasting. One of the biggest things that I teach clients is the aspect of fasting, the actual basis of fasting. You got to build it out first. If you planning on doing a 30-day fast, you need at least 2 weeks prior to that 30 days to even get yourself set up. You need at least 14, 15 days before stepping into that 30 days of your fast. You need at least 15 days of preparation to understand the points of the process to come into that state of that progress of working on being inside of that space. You're going to need that. But if you feel what I'm saying? Because if you don't do that, what happens every time you try to fast? Somehow, every time you try to fast, all of a sudden, it's not that everybody is calling you. It's not that everybody seems to have a problem. It's not that everybody's sitting there trying to give you lead focus. It's the factor that, remember, the grounding phase, the zoning of that space, all of that has to be assessed first. Why is it that if I took 14 days to prepare for my fast, that means in that 15 day, for that next 2 weeks, because you do it unconsciously all the time, energetic, I'm going to give you the example of why you do it. You'll sit here, give the example first. You'll sit here and say you need to go through spiritual maintenance. You about to take some time away from Facebook. But the only reason you say you need to take some time away from Facebook, some time away from Instagram, some time away from social media, you need to go to a spiritual reset with yourself. The only reason that you're saying that in that current state is why? Because somebody pissed you off. Somebody upset you. It just became too much. There's too many people on your timeline that are talking about you. There's too many people that are talking about you. There's too many people that are saying that have an expectation that you ain't living up to. That's the only reason you say you need spiritual maintenance. Remember, how you go in is how you go out. So you went in under that shame, that guilt, or that emotional impulse. So you went in based on that. So what do you think the first thing that's going to pop up when you step into that day one of your fast? The people that are the distractions that you're comfortable with, that you know how to react to. You know that every time you've had a conversation or an argument with that person, those people at your job, whatever it may be, clients, whoever it may be, that every time you do that, what's the first thing you go do? You know, you go up the street, around the corner, and you go get something to eat. See, this is why I can't fast, because motherfuckers blowing my focus. Okay. What did you learn? That I need to set, I don't have boundaries. It's not that people don't respect your boundaries. You don't have boundaries. Because your boundaries are in alignment with your standard. Remember, your boundaries are an absolute aspect. It's not a duality aspect. Your boundaries are an absolute aspect. That means when your standard is now set, your boundary is set, you accept on both sides what has to happen. That means, yes, you may have that one person that you can go ball and go chill with and go smoke with, go drink with, whatever. But you're noticing that the only time that person is available is when you're in that emotional unrest. You're in an emotional unrest. So of course that person is available. So now that you're assessing and acknowledging that you're in an emotional unrest, that person has to be assessed. That conversation has to be assessed. That conversation has to be had. The first time ever, and this is usually what it happens, the first time you sat in that space with that person and you said to yourself, I don't want to tell them this, that, and I don't want to tell them this because then they're not going to like me. They're going to look at me. They're going to look at me wild. They're going to look at me in a weird way. They're going to look at me and they're not going to respect me anymore. Here's the reality to that aspect of that space based in lack. They didn't respect you in the first place. Respect is unconditional. The simple thing is you don't trust yourself, your own ability. You do not trust in your own ability and capacity. That's why you put a condition on the respect from that person. It's like being in the hood. Your shit that you do, there's shit that motherfuckers do in the hood all fucking day that you know is not gonna work anywhere else. That you do in the hood every day that you know is not gonna work anywhere else. You know it ain't gonna work anywhere else. You know that conversation. You know your behavior. You know that pattern is not conducive in any other space. That's why you're always complaining about respect. But you own nothing inside of that space. See, since you don't own anything or have authority over anything inside of that space, you don't have to take accountability for the responsibility of that space. You see how you build out these energetic spaces? Because every time you was going to your job and they paid you for, I tell you this all the time. My pops tell me this all the time. Your job paid you for every hour that you was there. Even the hour when you decided to go into the bathroom and you wanted to go play Angry Birds, or you wanted to go, have my man clock me in. I'm gonna have my man's clock me in. I'm gonna have my man's clock me in. I'm gonna have my man's clock me out. Man, I should be running this place more. Man, they should be glad I'm here based on how much work I put in. All these things to try to validate the conditions that you put on respect because you're afraid, because of your fear of taking the assessment of your actual ability and capacity. To look at the roots of your abilities and your capacity. What gave you that ability, that initial ability and capacity for that space? At a certain point in time, yes, it worked for you. It worked for you because you're still living in that emotional age of when your mother needed you to be the man of the house, when your mother needed you to be the man of the house, when your mother needed you to watch the kids and you was playing mom. That's where you developed that original ability and capacity, that original ability. Your capacity, your emotional authority that you were taking on, that you built inside of that space, was based on that perception of that need. Invalidating the perception of that need. Validating the perception of that reality. But now you're coming into now you want to create new spaces, but you got to deal with what you fabricated first. That don't go away. You must deal with what you fabricated first. You must atone. You must atone for your sin, and sin is the lack of information that you had. That's the apology to yourself. I must apologize for my lack. I must apologize for me reacting to it based on a lack of information. I must forgive myself. I must forgive others for the lack of information that they had or the lack of understanding. I must apologize to others for me reacting based on a lack of information before I can now shift into that new space. Or else all I'm going to do is keep re-emulating that space, rebuilding that new space, doing it based on hope. Now when the manifestation come up, remember the manifestation and the result is absolute. Your results is absolute. Whether you're inside a loop is absolute. Whether you're doing it unconsciously or consciously, it's absolute. what's coming up and what's coming up inside of that space that you have to take your accountability for. You can, this is the aspect, this is, because until you build that, until you take that descent, this is what we're going to be getting to. We're going to be getting deep into the aspects of that ego aspect and why it's so important. I'm gonna give you this little key that we're going to get deep into in class. Your initial steps of your ego and the reason that you must go through the descent first is because your ego is remember, your ego is the ultimate employee. It is the ultimate protector. It's the ultimate provider. It's the ultimate protector. But the position in where you put it, you're putting it in a space to understand why it's protecting. It's understanding is where it's protecting. When it should be in the descent in your root space where it's resting in the state of protection. It's resting in that state of protection. It's accepted its ability to protect. On that aspect, so now, when we sit inside this space, we're going to build in this, when we're talking about it in class, when you're sitting inside of that space, and you're now building out that new space, now when you have that feeling, this is when you actually have confidence rather than the aspects of the arrogance. Now you understand the aspects of now you understand the aspects of that confidence. Now you understand the confidence. Why confidence becomes so strong. Because now you're not moving based in the survival aspect of lack. Confidence cannot thrive in lack. If you're taking the competency or the competency to when you're going inside of spaces and if your entire way of being is based in the aspect based on somebody's lack. That means you need somebody to be in a position based on lack to need you. Then you're not confident. Because the moment that person builds up, they're supposed to trigger where you're not. They're going to trigger that insecurity. They're going to trigger that insecurity. They're going to trigger that doubt. They're going to trigger that emotion that needs to be triggered. That's why that space is important. That's why that conversation is important. That's why that impulse is important. Because without that impulse, you're going to steady go through, your ego is going to go into protection mode and form those scapegoats for the aspects with yourself for you to keep doing the same motions. So now you go 365 days, 52 weeks, and even though you got some nice, pretty mementos, none of that can be put into your day. You meditate. Right now I'm working with two clients in mentorship in the aspects of we're actually creating out a parental plan for them. One of the biggest questions that I'm asked when people that are going through, like my clients are going through therapy, is how do I talk to my kids about spirituality? How do I talk to my kids about spirituality? How do I talk to my kids about things of this nature? And I always pose the question, what do you want to talk to your kids about? The first thing that 9 times out of the things you want to tell your kids about is the pain that you're aware of. When you go out in the world, you got to understand that everybody's against you. Why is the first thing that you're going to give your child is the world is against you? Why the first thing you'll give your children is the world's against you? Why is that the first thing you want to give your children? The world is against you. So then you wonder why in the manifestation, you're telling them the world is against them. And I love having this conversation because then your children now listen to music, as an example. The results are the manifestations of the music where everybody's saying getting it out the mud and the world's against them. Even if they know how to use it, even if it's because here's the game. It's not about the music, it's learning how to use it. I go through the stages and phases when when I'm going to bed, like last night, for example, when I went to bed, I got my binaural beat on. I was working in the masculine energy, raising my, doing the healing process. I was doing something similar to, I remember in Baki, where old buddy was laying in the bed and he was like, in his mind, he was visualizing swimming through, swimming through syrup or through syrup to get his muscles back. That's what I go to bed in. I wake up. Today is Moon Day, so I got my Moon Day binaural playlist that I'm gonna put on. Pick one of the songs, pick one of my beats, do my meditation, get suited up, dressed up, get ready to go for my run and my workout. And then I got my Spotify, right? I got on my Spotify and I hit my favorite song that I've been listening to was Ha Ha. It's a G.O.D song. It's on his new mixtape. Ha 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 ha. I'm listening to that ha 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 ha. The beat has me sitting and being aware of me running and moving forward. Me laughing and cause I'm celebrating. I'm celebrating my ability that I'm celebrating the simple fact, the simplicity being present that I can wake up at 4 a.m. and I've come so far from waking up at 4 a.m. like this and wanting to hit the snooze button to now I'm waking up before 4 a.m. Today, for example, I woke up at 3:18. I was in heavy anticipation. Now I'm going to get a game. Because y'all know this weekend there was a solar eclipse and all that aspect. I woke up at 3:18. I laid there, went back to sleep. I went into an early meditation. Everything inside of that space. I was anticipating my waking up. And it wasn't for, here's the biggest thing. This is when you know that you're present because it's not for anything. This is when you know that you're present and you're balanced in the moment because it's not for anything. It's not because of. It's not for anything. The simple fact that I'm able to wake up at 4 a.m. and roll out of bed, hit my 30 push-ups, roll, get in the lotus position and start my breath work and go through those functions. The simple fact that I'm able to visualize, y'all remember the joint from 13 Ghosts with the shit in the center of the room? I'm able to visualize myself in that space with my energy now cycling around me and myself having access to multiple access points of my energy. The 962 times that I've done Arm Day, past, present, future. The 962 times that I've done 120 squats. The moment and points of time where I was able to do 120 push-ups, not all in one setting, but 20 at a time, doing 120 push-ups. I'm able to tap into those spaces. I'm able to tap into those spaces of every conversation, all of the multitudes of the conversations that led to me leading y'all at this point. To meet us having this conversation. That's transmuting. I'm literally able to transmute. And since I'm now transmuting at a higher rate, now because it's less, because I've dealt with the base levels. You sat with those base levels. You brought that root space into balance. You brought your resting state into multiple balances. You dealt with those things in that root space. You've dealt with those insecurities, the things that'll leave you down there trying to survive in the releasing. You sat with those aspects. So now when that energy hits you, when that vibration hits you and you're like, ooh, you start feeling good, instead of you reacting and immediately trying to use it, you can sit with it. Because the point of every pulse of energy that you're going to go through in a transmutation process is allow it to go through cleanly. This is one of the things we're going to get into in the class, is allowing it to actually cycle through cleanly. allowing it to cycle through undisturbed. Allowing yourself to take that energy from your root chakra. When I tell, like, for example, if I asked you right now, fellas and ladies, how many Kegels are you doing a day? I do the minimum of 100 Kegels. That's pulling up on your nuts and pulling up on your pelvic floor. While I'm doing my breath work in the initial parts of my meditation, I'll sit there and I'll count from 99, I'll focus up here. I'm focused on bringing the energy up here. I'll count from 99 all the way to 1. My first initial times doing it, I did it for about a month. 99 to 1, while learning how to control my breath. After a while, I was led to go into key numbers inside of it. Like, for example, I was born in 1984. So I would count down to 84, and then I would say, okay, let me hold this pulse for 90 seconds. So you start working with your emotions. I hold the pulse for 90 seconds. That means I'll count the 90. I'll count up the 90 while holding at 84. I'll hold it for 90 seconds. I'll release. Another one of my go-to numbers is 27. So I'll count down to 27. And then I'll hold it again for another 90 seconds. Or I'll go down to 16. And I'll choose you, depending on the day, you pick and choose the numbers. I'll use my birthday as an example in that aspect. 2/16/1984. I'll stop at 84. I'll stop at 16. I'll stop at 84. Right now I'm 39. I'll stop at 39. I'll stop at 16. And then I'll hold it at 2. Because now I'm training myself to hold energy in certain points. That's the personalization to the aspects of you working with your energy. As you start understanding that feeling and not interrupting that cycling loop, now you're able to actually use it in visualizations. See, there's a process before you even step into actually working with your energy. You have to understand the grounding and the zoning effect. I gotta set the grounding for me doing that aspect. That's why you're taught to draw a sigil. That's where you're taught to, the first time, one of the biggest things I go through, I have a client now, in the aspects of teaching you, like actually going through guided meditation. All right, cool. What incense would you like to burn? Let's burn sandalwood. Sandalwood is for this. Here are the properties of sandalwood. So when I burn sandalwood, this is my visualization. This is my breath. These are the mantras that I'm going to use while I'm in. These are the mantras I'm going to use. This is the mantra I'm going to use while burning sandalwood. Because remember, in order for anything to be manifested, I always say this, all 5 senses must be active. All 5 senses must be active. All 5 senses must have a correspondence. All 5 senses must be active. But if you don't understand, fire is based on the decision, earth is based on grounding, wind is based on direction, water is based on the flow, the ether is the ebb, that means where you're at presently. Then when you're trying to activate these points, if you're in the past and you don't realize that you're in the past and you're trying to manifest something you're doing that work, you'll be wondering why the next 3 weeks you having these wild ass dreams about your past. If you don't understand that where your present point with yourself is, your decision making or anxiety kicks in every time you make that point. Now you're going to be thinking about, okay, cool. It didn't look like this, so I'm going to put it off. I'll put it off till tomorrow. So now going to the example of that fasting, by the time you get to day 5, the reason you can't get to day 5 because you had a certain expectation. You wouldn't listen to somebody doing their fast and they said, yeah, by day 5, you're going to be feeling like this, this, and this. You get to day 5 and you don't feel any of that, so you stop. See, there's that process. There's a process. Before you try to put on your before you got to understand your standard. See, the biggest thing about us doing this work is now the biggest thing about me understanding doing my work is before I came into the public sector of doing it to the public. That means y'all, you rocking with me. You see my pages. You see, I had to go through the private sector. I had to go through that private sector first. It was a necessity for me to go through the new building stage. And as one of my favorite mentors told me, nigga, don't nobody know you. For the last 15, 20 years, nigga, you was known as the nigga that can cook. The nigga that can throw down in the kitchen. That's what you were known as for the last 15 years. Everything that you did was attached to you having the ability to move, and I didn't understand that at the time, highly stressful environments, staying on your feet for long periods of time, being able to direct yourself for long periods of time, learning to delegate, learning time management. That's what you were known of for 15 plus years. So what makes you think that you're able to just hop into this space without defining the new grounds? See, that's one of the biggest things that knocks people off inside of that space. I remember the first thing that a lot of my earlier clients was telling me. A lot of my earlier clients, when it was in the private aspect, they were like, most of my clients were like, the stuff that you're saying, a lot of people aren't saying, and this is the stuff that I need. You're really you pissed me. I've had clients look at me and be like, yo, you pissed me off. I was mad at you. But then I'm sitting there as I'm mad at you. All I can remember is the exercise that you gave me. And I was like, damn, that's what you were supposed to do. Was to actually piss me off. So as I'm sitting there going through my process, I'm like, how many people I'm looking at for myself, because you're always an observer. You're always the ultimate observer. As the teacher, you're always the student. As the student, you're always the teacher. How many times was I triggered that I ignored and I couldn't be like, you know what? I need to go back, and even if I don't see them in the physical, I need to thank them. I need to thank them for what they did. I need to thank them for pissing me off the 16, 17. I need to thank them for pissing me off that day. I need to thank them for calling me at 2:00 a.m. 15. I need to go back and thank that chick for calling my phone 26 times at 2 a.m. For me to wake up and look at 37 missed calls and 40. I need to go back and thank her. Because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have sat with the emotional impulse that I was really upset. I was tripping. I was angry. I was trying to get my way, and sat with it and actually sat and looked at those messages. I didn't look at all of them long ass shits. You can pretty much take an observation of what's trying to be said. No matter what is being said, let me apologize. I apologize. I don't want to read all of this. Can we sit down and have a conversation face to face? Because I don't want to read this and misinterpret anything that you're saying. That's how I knew I was growing. That's how you know you're growing, because I'm going through it with a different response. Yo, you wrote 19 paragraphs and pages, and it probably took you 15, 20 minutes, an hour to write all of this. I'm not going to read this. Let's have a conversation face to face. If you want to go line by line through these text messages, we can, but I want to do it face to face. Because that was my chance in learning. I had to accept that for a long period of time for myself, that I never had the example of, use a simple example. Anytime you get into an argument, whether it's with a woman or a man or a woman, whatever it is, every time you argue, you automatically lose. How Ivan saying Iron Man 2, you lose. You lose. Every time you get in an argument, you lose. Every time you got to step outside and get angry, you lose. Because now remember that emotional impulse is going to take over. You lose automatically. Every argument you're going to lose. Whether you got your point across or you won the argument, you still lost. Because now you just took away, you just gave up control. You just gave up you just gave up authority. Remember the emotional authority? You just gave up emotional authority. You gave this person emotional authority. And what did you do? You stepped back. You were trying to take responsibility, make them take responsibility. What is a responsibility without authority? Slavery. That's why you keep going through that cycle, whether it's with your girl, your wife, your boyfriend, baby father, all these people. That's why you keep going through those cycles, because they are the masters, or they take energetic mastery over you. You need them to keep that behavior going. You need them to keep your pattern going. Because without them, all you're going to do is look for something else to validate your pattern. Because you're not confident. I talked about this last week. Most of my patterns and behaviors, if not all of them, I wasn't confident. I wasn't the best cook because I knew how to cook. I was just very calculated. I knew how to count. And this is the thing when it comes to the aspects of lack, you only understand basics. You know the basics. You know how to read. You know how to write. You know how to count up to 10. You know how to say A. You know how to say certain things, but you don't comprehend what you're saying. You don't comprehend the energetics of what you're saying. And it's okay. That's what the process is all about. That's what therapy is for. That's what mentorship is for. That's what the coaching is. That's what the course is for. That's what that relationship is for. It's the teaching of that aspect for that experience. It's not meant for you to use as to keep your expectations. And if the expectation is met, whether or not it's met, it don't matter. You're going to connect that exemption to it. All right, cool. She ain't the smartest chick or the best looking chick, but she loyal to my behavior and pattern. Say that to yourself, fellas. Say that to yourself. He ain't the best, but he loyal to my behaviors and patterns. Say that to yourself, ladies. Cause that's the same thing you're going to say. The same thing that you don't like the person for, the same thing you like the person for. Same shit. You knew that your behavior and pattern of you not sitting and taking time for yourself you don't understand how to budget out your emotional accounts. That person serves that purpose because they don't know how to deal with it. So the skill set and ability and capacity, since they're based on they lack that ability and capacity, you can subserve or supplement your ability and capacity in that space, as long as it's attached to their insecurity. So you have a control of certainty. So now you always have a scapegoat. As we talked about last week, we talked about those scapegoats. You always got a scapegoat. Look, I told you from the beginning how I was. Okay. But you said what, but you didn't say why. You haven't even sat with the why long enough. Because that's the vetting process. So now you're not used to security. You want the safety. See, each one of these processes that's why it's important. That's why it becomes important to actually, I need to sit down and actually go through this process and allow my expectations to be challenged to make me present. Because all I do is challenge your expectations so you can become present. All I do is challenge your exemptions so you can become present. And then aid you through the walk through the process. That's all that I do. That's all that a therapist is truly going to do. You feel what I'm saying? But that's the aspect of, instead of always trying to skip out and skip the accountability aspect. Yes, I did it. Instead of me beating and allowing yourself to sit in present. So even when you're beating yourself up, there's a reason to you there's a conducive reason to you beating yourself up, so to speak. You're having this conversation with yourself to get it out, to validate that where I'm feeling this from is valid. I have to sit. I haven't been present. What isn't valid is me no longer not being present inside of that moment. That's what's not valid. But what is valid is me having to accept that, and we go in this aspect with emotional waves. I've been 12 years old for the last 10. I've been 12 years old for 15 years. The reason I couldn't leave the job is because I was still living in the loop from when I was 15 and got my first legal job and everything that looped around my first legal job. So that's why I worked the same job going through the motion for 15 years. The reason that you stuck inside of that relationship is because the initial part of that relationship was an hope or an expectation of change, and you've been living through that loop. It worked. It worked. It worked. It worked at a certain, yes, it did work. But now you're wanting to shift. So now it's time for the true assessment. Remember, the assessment brings forth the absolute. Whatever else you put in that humanly, maybe you had kids. Maybe you got a couple, you're going to have to deal with. That's the results of your absolute. But instead of looking for the scapegoats, it's time to secure yourself. It's time for that security. It's that security process. It's time to let you know what? It's time for me to sit down. But that leads me to, once again, appreciate y'all for stopping through. October 31st is the first day of class, Chakra and Shadow. Chakra and Shadow is a comprehensive 6-week course, 6 weeks. We're going to be getting into the initial 7 chakras. We're going to be getting into as above, the higher chakras, the lower earth-based chakras, reflexology, human design. We're going to get into a lot of these aspects inside of that space, working with your energy. October 31st, 8 p.m. is the first day of class. It will be an introduction and a meet and greet. That means everybody that signed up for the class, we gonna meet up via virtually, of course. There's 4 spots left at $30 to get in at $30 get you access to the class, all the PDF material. I'm gonna send all the material through emails. It's an interactive class, so we're gonna have a blast. There's 4 spots left at $30. October 21st is the last day to register. October 21st, the last day to register. I will keep registration open up until the 30th. Up until the 29th or the 30th. But after October 31st, the price goes to its original price of $110 to get into the class. It's $110 to get into the class. And it will only be available via the website. That means you only can go on the website to sign up for the class. It's $110. The $30 deal, the $30 to register for the class, is inbox only. Hit me in my inbox. We can set that up. But I want you to understand the process of building out the new spaces is going to be assessing and grounding and zoning. It's going to be zoning out the space. How did you build these original spaces? One of the biggest things that I work on with my clients all the time is I'm very big on trauma mapping. Everybody that's in your life is a different access point on this map. Everybody on that map, when we do trauma mapping, there's a reason that this person, this ley line, this statue of this person, person taking this status in your life, there's a reason that that person exists. There's a reason that this person exists over here. There's a reason that you put all these points inside of your life. And they're going to be making sure they're seeing how present you are with yourself inside of that space every single time. What you have, that's the process. That's the process. A love spell, passports, taking all these multiple, going into these spaces to get all yourself unlocked and doing stuff before you do other work. You better make sure even if you is getting that information, you better make sure you got an advisor. You better go vet an advisor first. Because in reality, you're building out a new space. You building out an entire new world. You better go get yourself an advisor. I have an advisor and a mentor that I have my weekly conversations with. I have advisors and mentors. I ain't doing this shit alone. I got advisors and mentors that I talk to. And for me, it's not on it's like whether it's a regular basis, I might check in with them once a month, or they might hit me up and ask me what I'm doing. We have that conversation because it's important. It's very important to have yourself an advisory board. You want to call yourself a king. You want to call yourself a queen. You want to call yourself a god. You want to call yourself a goddess. Call yourself a titan. Call yourself give yourself all of these titles of authority, but you have not created the spaces in the successions that are under that aspect of responsibility. Every king got an advisor. Every queen got an advisor. I said it the other day to one of my people. I was like, yo, me moving forward, I said it to myself. I said it like 2 years ago. But I was like, yo, me moving forward, even for my born day, my death day, it's business meetings. Anybody I'm dealing with in the aspects of that space, in that world, and meet what I'm doing now, it's business minded. That means if I do have a party, it's going to be a meeting of other people that are in the aspects that we do in business. Even the conversations that you have, when they change, they should become basics about your practical application. That's the key. Your conversation with people should be based on practical application. It should really bore you to have, I want to talk about conspiracy theories. That should bore the shit out of you. That should bore you. Why? That's not the basis of my conversations. The last thing that I'm going to talk about is, let's talk about therapy. Because I've created the space for that. You can look at every one of my pages and how my pages are put up. When you're creating that new structure, I talked about this last week, when you're creating that new structure of a space, it took, like I used it as the example, it took me about 6 to 7 years to even get my Facebook and my Instagram, all my social media to what it acts, to sit with what social media is, as an example. Social media is an advertising hub. It's an advertising hub. That means everything you put up there is an advertisement. What are you advertising? It's an advertising hub. That's why there's so much ads on your damn shit. It's an advertising hub. If you're using it for any other aspect other than advertising something, yes, you can use it for the aspects of, if you're using it for advertising, then you're going to use it for vetting. Naturally, it becomes under advertising and marketing and what you're using it as a vet. It's a vetting tool. Because by the time someone hit me in my inbox, the only response I have for anybody that hits my inbox most of the time, someone I've not been having consistent conversations with, is, how can I be of service? That's it. Because everything else matched that. That's you restructuring. That's you rebuilding your space. That's you, okay, none of this shit's supposed to be the same. It's going to change. And we're not talking about physical. We're talking about the mental aspects. That coming in sync with that spiritual, coming in sync with that mental, coming in sync with the emotional, coming in sync with the experimental that creates the new physical. It's kind of like, the best analogy I can use is, you shouldn't be going to Miami and Vegas. You shouldn't be going to Miami to go to a restaurant, to order chicken tenders. You shouldn't be going out of town. When you go outside of yourself, it should be to go for a new experience, not to do the same. Another analogy. You shouldn't be going out of town to get a hotel room to do the same things you do at the house. I shouldn't be going out of town. If there's a movie theater in my town where I'm at in the present, I shouldn't be going out of town to go to the movie theater. Think about that. I shouldn't be going out of town to go to the movie theater. Got a movie theater in town. Feel me? Things that I'm doing in my present tense, the only time I go outside of myself is for the new experience. You see, because when you're going out based on the new experience, that's what takes away the expectation. One of the things that I teach when I was teaching early on when I was a nutritionist was, in the beginning of my journey, I was vegan in the house and I was vegetarian outside of the house. Because I would take away the expectation and take away those exemptions and understand I was reintroducing myself to a new standard. That means in the house, I'm vegan, so I'm not eating cheese. I still had an aspect for cheese. So I'm going to go to the Mexican restaurant. You damn right I'm going to get some cheese dip. But now I'm learning how to wean myself away from that. That's not something I'm going to do every single day. Feel what I'm saying? But I desire y'all to be the best. I desire you to be the best. 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 But it takes you sitting in time for that processing. The way that you approach this and the way that you approached it got you here. It's going to take something. It's going to take the difference to take you to the next level. If you're like, for example, for me, I was very closed the fuck off. I didn't like asking for help or going into certain spaces. I didn't like the perception of if somebody asked me and giving them my honest answer. I wasn't confident in giving an honest answer. Allowing somebody to say they don't understand. So I found myself going in a lot of spaces, over-explaining myself. When you're over-explaining yourself, what's the first thing that you do? You try to pinpoint and use you try to cherry pick some of the best words and the best vernacular ever. You trying to say all the right shit when you over-explaining yourself. But when you being honest and you saying you don't understand and you had that conversation to where you really sitting in your vulnerability, that's when you're able to plant them new seeds. That's when you're able to do actually going through that process of change. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here. We're gonna do this. We don't keep this consistent train on Mondays. I'm gonna pull a card. We're talking about cycles. What it's looking like as we pull another. Let's pull cards. What up? What it's looking like is this is a consistent point. The thing being consistent is you're at the same point you were at, whether it be this year, this month, at this point in time. You're coming to the end of the process where you make the same decision with yourself. You're in the cycle. You're coming to that same point where it's time to make that decision again, whether you're going to go or stay, go forward, however it may be inside of that space. You're used to that decision. But now you're sitting there with yourself and you're like, the thing that stops you from making that decision is sitting with it. Sitting with it. You're so used to being the one that's in control of what's poured out. You're used to being the one that's in control of how it's poured out, where it's poured out, how long you gonna pour it out. You're used to having that control. Now it's time for you to start letting go of that control and sitting in that space to allow that uncertainty to pour out. You need these people that are around you, the places and the events around you, to trigger that uncertainty. You need them to see. It's going to be a necessity for them to see you that way so you can actually have that new conversation. See, the thing about your decision-making process, once again, it's a lot of sitting down in it. The thing about the decision-making process for you is you're used to making the cuts. You're used to making the cuts, setting the audibles, making the plays. That's what you're used to. That's not what that space is for. That's not what those people, that place was ever made for. That place was not meant for you to make the cuts and make the audibles. On the other end of that, that space was meant for exactly what it was meant for. It's going to show you the audible that needs to be played. It's going to show you the cut that needs to be made. It's going to show you where you need to measure at. It's showing you it. It's showing you where you have to assess your tone. It's showing you where you got to assess your tone. It's showing you where you got to assess how you're approaching it, how you're looking. It's showing you. But since you're so used to making the cut before that happens, that puts you in the space because you want to be the beholder of the decision. You want to make the final decision. Here's the thing. When making the decisions, you can make the final decision. That's cool. But how long are you sitting with it? How long are you actually sitting with it? Are you sitting with it to that point of uncertainty or unfamiliar aspect? And then when you get to that unfamiliar point, what are you doing after that unfamiliar point? Here goes the key. What are you doing after that unfamiliar point? What new tools have you been given or you've been presented with that you have access to? See, the biggest thing that stops us, I remember the biggest thing that used to stop me a lot of the times with everything I was doing was I wasn't using the new tools because for a lot of us in the aspects, we think it's a one and done. You're so used to survival mode and having one bullet in one clip, the clip empty, and you got one in the chamber and it's a throwaway that you ain't, cause you're not used to having that full clip on your side to use. You're not used to using a new tool or repurposing, using that tool in different spaces. This is why I always talk about mentorship, advisory, sitting down, having them sessions inside of that space and actually learning how to use. You don't understand something. It doesn't mean that it's useless. And that goes into that 9 of Wands. It's highlighting that cycle. This is the end of the cycle of you being able, it is, once again, once it manifests in the physical, it's been done. Here's the key. Once it manifests in the physical, Bobby Hemme said that all the time. Once you see it on TV, it's done. It's been done once you see it on TV. That shit's been in play. It's been in play for the last, I'm hearing 3 to 6. It's already been in play. The cycle's already been ended. It's already been in play. You're just seeing the physical manifestation of it. Let's go back. Go back to the beginning of this video. Remember, I don't read the cards in the aspect. I read the card to read the energy to set the point. If you coming in right now at the end of this video, right now in this point, go back to the beginning of the video. In this reading, you want more clarity on this reading? It's going to make sense if you go back to the beginning of this video. If you go back to the beginning and you still Aggie, hit me up in the inbox. Hit me in the inbox. We can set something up. Hit me up in the inbox, set something up. I'm going to go over the reading over the cards one more time. You're now in the cycle. You're noticing now energetically, you're now in a cycle to where you're now in that energetic cycle to where that decision that you made, the decisions that you always make, you always come to this point of decisions, but you don't like sitting with what manifests. You're not used to sitting with what manifests. So since you're not used to sitting with what manifests, you're used to cutting yourself short. You don't like sitting down, so you like cutting yourself short. So since you cut yourself short, the only thing that when you own that you made the decision, it's never from a space of confidence. It's always from a space of a lack of confidence. It's always from that space of, oh my God, I just want it to go right. So by the time you sit in that space, that last card, what you get stuck on, this is what you get hung up on in that cycle of your decision, is the physical manifestations. You get stuck on the physical manifestations. But as I just said, as Bobby Hemmett said, by the time it's in the physical, by the time you see it on TV, by the time you hear it on the radio, by the time it hit the face, by the time it hit that, it's already done. That cycle's done. That thought has already been grounded. It's already been planted. It's already been watered. The heat then already hit it and germinated. The wind is already blown and pollinated it out to the next space. It's already ready for the next cycle. It's you that's not coming into that space of grounding and be like, you know what? I need to create new patterns. I need to understand my new patterns. It's you that's hindering. This is the explanation of it's you stopping you. So what are you about to do? Once again, if you just came in, go back to the beginning of this video and what I just read, it will make sense. I desire you to be the best. Class starts October 31st, 8 p.m. Hit me in the inbox to register. If you know what you need, that's why you here. The truth serves itself. The answer serves your perception. I am not here to I am here to oppose your perceptions and challenge your perspective. I love you. You love us. Ashe.